Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year, and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum. This is our first semester, the first forum, of the 2012 calendar year. We're excited to have all of you with us tonight. My name is Trey Grayson, and I'm the director of the Institute of Politics here at the Harvard Kennedy School. Tonight's forum wouldn't be possible without the tremendous efforts of Ambassador Swanee Hunt. Swanee is the Eleanor Roosevelt Lecturer of Public Policy here at the Kennedy School, was the founding director of the Women in Public Policy program here at the Kennedy School, and served our country as our ambassador to Austria. And we're very pleased to have her in tonight's forum. So please join me in welcoming Ambassador Swanee Hunt and the panelists.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I think this is the 14th time we've been able to bring extraordinary women from all around the world who are working in conflict zones. And we wouldn't be here without this crowd, and you are the resultant part of the work of the Institute of Politics, but also the Carr Center for Human Rights, the Women in Public Policy program, the Center for Public Leadership. So I want to say a particular thank you to each of those groups for being part of, being co-sponsors here. You enjoyed, I hope, the title, Why Women Won the Nobel Peace Prize. And I had the enormous privilege of being in the entourage of President Johnson Sirleaf, who, as you know, was one of the 3 winners, and she is a graduate of the Kennedy School. She was there with Leigh McBoy, also from Liberia. As you know, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is Liberian. And it was so interesting to think why they chose 2 Liberians as well as a Yemeni representative of Arab Spring. And I think it was because of this statement they were making about change beginning at the top and the bottom, and how you have to have it coming from both directions. Because Leigh McBoy is this fabulous grassroots organizer type. So anyway, sitting there, it was so exciting hearing, being in this gorgeous room in the city, what'd you say? In Oslo, yes, City Hall. Thank you, thank you. I'm 61 years old, and if you think that's bad, wait till you ask me the name of someone, like my children. So anyway, so here are the words that we heard coming from the Nobel Committee. They talked about that they were giving these women this prize for their particular work, but also for their nonviolent struggle, and then they said to ensure women's rights to full participation in peace-building work. Now that is a very important policy statement, because what you're doing then, you're talking about changing the whole security paradigm. Right now, security in most people's minds means bombs and bullets. And the question becomes, if in fact you have a large participation of women throughout the whole peace process. Peace process doesn't mean simply negotiations. It also means street protests. It means all kinds of social media now to try to prevent a war or bring down a dictator. It means after a war having the Transitional Justice, the Tribunal, or the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or having simply an honest government instead of a corrupt government, which can often lead right back into war again. So how do you get women to be fully involved in all of that? Well, clearly, you have to have the policymakers who are willing to take a stand. And President Obama has done just that on December 19th. He signed an executive order which launches a U.S. National Action Plan on Women, Peace, and Security. And he calls this a comprehensive roadmap for accelerating and institutionalizing efforts across the United States government to advance women's participation in making and keeping peace. Now, there are a whole lot of countries around the world who are doing this. So it's not like, I'm afraid, that we're leading the charge here, but at least we're coming through and doing our part. Then Secretary Clinton, on the day that this was launched, I'm going to read, forgive me for reading to you all, but it's too important not to. She says, from Northern Ireland to Liberia to Nepal and many places in between, we have seen that when women participate in peace processes, they focus discussion on issues like human rights, justice, national reconciliation, and economic renewal that are critical to making peace, but are often overlooked in formal negotiations. They build coalitions around ethnic and sectarian lines, and they speak up for other marginalized groups. That's really important, that the women are there, not just, this isn't Hillary, but the women are there not just representing their own points of view, but also the other marginalized groups. They act as mediators and help foster compromise. And when women organize in large numbers, they galvanize opinion and help change the course of history. You're going to hear from 6 extraordinary women tonight. And the first one, Fadwa, will you open this up and give us an opening statement? Go on and stand up.
Thanks.
And let us hear from you, from your perspective.
Thanks. I'm Fadwa Shair. I'm from Palestine. Thanks to Ambassador Swanee Hunt and the Inclusive Security staff to give me this chance to be this evening in front of you. 22 years ago, I was arrested and taken to a prison in Jerusalem. It was a month after my marriage, and the second time in my life I'd been arrested for peaceful action. For 3 days, I sat in a cell, waiting to see what would happen to me. When my back began to hurt, soldiers took me in handcuffs to a hospital. The Israeli doctor there didn't hesitate. He told the soldiers to remove the cuffs in the hospital. I was no more or less than a patient he needed to heal. When the doctor examined me, he found that I was pregnant. Thanks to him, he asked them to release me immediately. And it was done next day. The doctor is the kind of person I have met often in the conflict. Israelis and Palestinians connecting the kind of person I have met often in the conflict. Israelis and Palestinians connecting with one another as human beings, living next to one another in peace, 2 peoples, 2 states. Of course, in conflict, not every encounter is easy. But I remember the day I finally knew, without no doubts, that the only way forward was through peaceful dialogue with one another, bridging the divide both as individuals and through the political process. It was in May 2003, and I had been invited to the memorial services of Faisal Husseini, the man behind the PLO's participation in the Madrid Peace Conference of 1991, and my mentor. Again, I was pregnant for 5 months. By the time I returned home that night, after saying farewell to my mentor and walking 6 kilometers in the heat, I'd start bleeding. I was taken to a hospital in Jerusalem. The baby was born early. I was allowed to leave the hospital after 4 days, but my teeny daughter had to stay, living in an incubator to survive. Can you imagine how I felt? I went home through the checkpoint to Ramallah. But of course, I wanted to return to the hospital at once. At the checkpoint the next morning, the soldiers refused to let me through. So for the next 40 days, I walked 3 hours every day through the mountains to get to the hospital and feed my baby. I carried with me milk, and I had pumped it during the night and frozen to carry to my daughter. Meeting those soldiers wasn't like meeting the kind doctor or the many other Israelis I worked with for peace. Still, I said to them, in spite of what you have done to me, I have hope that I can work with you. This is the truth that the women in Israel and Palestine know. We don't need to destroy others. We need to live with them. We need to understand that they have a stake in the future, that we must speak to one another face to face, and that ultimately we must trust one another. With women, I know can happen. It already has. We have been working together for peace since the first days that I left college. Today, we run joint projects on issues that affect both of our societies. We both want borders that allow and give access for both of us to reach the schools and doctors for our children. In our part of the world, women have been active since the beginning of the last century, driving change because they were not ashamed to care for others. And they were not afraid of giving without taking in return. In Arabic, we have a saying, women are like the devil, very strong. When they say they will do something, they will do it, in spite of all the obstacles. If you think this is important in daily life, consider how important it is in negotiations, in issues of life and death, war and peace. We are remarkable communicators. We listen to people, consult, sympathize, understand different points of view. That's why we can build relationships. When I see a boy walking to school, I pick him up in my car and give him a lift. It doesn't matter to me whose child this is. He's part of a community and I care about him. Only with this mentality can negotiations be accepted by the people whose futures they will affect. That's the key that's often missing. Women make a difference, not just at the negotiating table, but also afterward, when they bring the agreements back home. With women's leadership, people in the communities can understand and accept the peace accords. And that's how you create peace that will last. But we can't do it alone. Our work to create peace must be tied to the highest levels. Negotiators and those creating policy must open their eyes and ears. They must value peace enough to include those who can be most effective in creating it. If I want to improve life for my children, then I must and shall move toward that future with the other side, on a path of nonviolence. Otherwise, the price is too high. We have seen blood, so we don't imagine how a bleeding man feels, as difficult as it can be to make peace. The blood is much more costly. I'm not speaking as a woman of the elite who has watched events from far away and has no understanding of realities on the ground. I know what has happened in this conflict. I have been through it myself. And that's why I have a clear vision now. My Israeli partners, and I see that on this path, the world has been walking. The future is dim. Across the bridge, there is no light. But working with one another, with the people, and with the support from the international community, women can turn on the lights. Thanks a lot.
Now, I know each of you has bios, and I'm not going to read these bios to you, but obviously that was Fadwa Sher, and she is a spectacular spokeswoman for the Palestinian groups who want so much and so committedly to work with Israelis. And I will tell you that that group has gotten smaller and smaller as this conflict has gone on, and I have enormous appreciation to you, Fadwa, for coming and being part of this gathering. You will see that she has been very involved with the Palestinian government in many different ways. You'll see that in your bios. Let me introduce, we're going to have a conversation now up here, and let me introduce first Samira Hamidi, who is the head of this spectacular Afghan Women's Network with 90 women's organizations, 5,000 individuals. And Ms. Hamidi is very well known across Afghanistan, but now internationally, because she has been in the major organizations as the various jirgas, the various conferences where the future of Afghanistan is being planned, is being created. And thank you so much for coming. Then next to her is Mozarat Kadim. As you see from the bio, she has been working through an academic setting, but has been called upon to be more and more involved at the community life, at the community base. She's published many books, many articles, but probably her most effective work that is really capturing the imagination of people in this country and around the world is when she goes into territory that the UN that is off limits to the UN, it's off limits to the US because of the power of extremists in those areas, and she herself goes in to do the work turning those families around, turning those young men around. And I hope, Mozarat, that you'll speak to us this evening a bit about that. General Orit Adato is the, are you the only three-star general that Israel has had, or is there, till now, up till now? That's right, blazing the trail, spent 24 years in the Israeli Defense Forces, and then became, very interestingly, the commissioner of the Israeli Prison Service. So you can imagine what a very dicey role that is. She has been the first international vice president of the International Correction and Prisons Associations, which has professionals, 600 professionals from 75 nations. So she has a whole international profile herself. Thank you for being with us. And Zainab El-Sawi from Sudan. What a beautiful countenance and what a beautiful story you have to tell us in terms of your work in Sudan. She is a researcher and former lecturer at Afad University. Some of you know of Afad, which is an all-women's university. Very, very powerful in terms of preparing women all across the country. And she is the coordinator of the Sudanese Women's Empowerment for Peace. You all, it is hard, hard, hard doing this work right now in Sudan. I have been there. I know that when I was involved with groups consulting women leaders, that we had to meet like in a back room of a pizza parlor. You know, this isn't the kind of place where you get a room in a hotel for a conference. And I have enormous respect for you for the, what shall I say, the risk that you undertake to do your work. Rebecca, were you here in '99? Right here, right, when we first launched this? And this is Rebecca Joshua Okwachi. She is now the Deputy Minister for Education in what she will remind you several times is the newest country on earth, right, from South Sudan. And boy, has she seen it all. Has she seen it all. A freedom fighter in the bush for off and on for 10 years. And the stories that she can tell. Well, I don't want to take any more time. I feel like people are here to hear from you. If I can simply put questions out, and these really are for conversation and discussion, and then we will then open this time for Q&A as we always do. So I have a first question that is always on my mind, but it's always on the minds of people with whom we speak. And that is, when you think about the context in which you all are working, it seems to me that the laws, the traditions, the cultures that you're living with are really, I want to say, at times oppressive. They're very limiting, and people say, well, you know, Swanee, you have to be culturally sensitive. You shouldn't be trying to get women to do things that are illegal or whatever. And so, can someone speak to that whole issue of culture and how that affects, or laws, how that affects your work?
You know, women oppression can take different forms, and law could be one of them. In a situation like Sudan, for example, as you all know that Sharia is the main source of laws, the main reference. We have a law called 152, Article 152, under the criminal law of the law of 1991. This article says that whoever wear an indecent clothes in a public place will be punished with whipping 40 lashes. And so many women suffer from that every day, because it's actually, it doesn't define what is an indecent clothes. What is it? it's absolutely up to the police or the security person to judge based on his background on what women shall wear. So this put so many women at risk every day. And I will tell a story here about a journalist called Lubna. That happened 2 years ago. She was arrested under this article, 152, and they took her to court. And she was courageous enough to invite everybody to the court. So we were all invited. We decided to go and attend. The security people did not allow us to attend the court. So we were all standing in front of the court. They tried to let us leave the place, but we insisted that we have to stay and see what the court is going to do. When they got fed up with us, they brought this car with like a cage, big cage, in the back of the car, and they arrested. We were around 42 ladies. The driver was really driving the car very, very fast, and he was like going right and left, and we are all falling on each other. One of the ladies broke her arm, and others were injured. And at that moment, some of the women, they managed to take their mobiles and take pictures and send the name of of the ladies in that car to all the lawyers, to all the network, to all the activists. And it was really like very, very fast. So when we arrived to the police station, the first thing they asked us to give our mobile phones. So by that time, the message was sent already. But I was like, really, okay, now we are not going to communicate with people outside. Anyway, we gave our mobiles, and when we went inside, it was a very small room with no windows, just a door, nothing. We were sitting on the floor, and I just saw some of the ladies taking mobiles from their pocket and from their bags. And I said, didn't you give your mobile? They said, yeah, because we knew that they will take it, so we brought 2 with us. And that was yeah. And actually, we were singing, and we were like, I think that the feeling that I got, we stayed there for 5 hours. I felt very much the solidarity feeling among us. And actually, we were very much provoking them, because they asked us several questions, like, you know, the normal question, your name and your address. And they asked us, what is your tribe? What is the tribe that you belong to? And without us agreeing, we all answered the same answer. We are Sudanese. So we are not going to tell you which tribe we belong to. And I think they got fed up with us. They decided to let us go because of the trouble that we are causing inside. And we are singing a lot of songs against the regime, and they didn't like that. And they asked us to write an agreement saying that we are not going to do that again. And we said, no, actually, if we will write that we will definitely going to do that again. So we stayed for, it was Ramadan, it was really difficult because people were fasting. And it was the most interesting 5 hours that I spent.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah, there were 2 actually were also arrested, and I must say they were really like they hit them badly. And they were saying, what do you have to do with women? This is a women issue. Why are you coming with them? Why are you standing with them? So as if it's something that is.
Yeah, but thank you for saying that, because it sounds like there's a like all women are this way and all men are that way. You know, when you hear these statements, and obviously there are many men who are more what shall I say, who are more peace-loving, if you will, to be simplistic, than many women are, right? And So there are all these differences. We're really talking, though, women as a large group and men as a large group. There are some differences for whatever reasons. You know, nobody knows to what extent it's nature or nurture or whatever. But there are some differences in how people act. But thank you for raising that. But I have to ask, General, I mean, this must be so interesting to you to be hearing how, you know, they had the extra phone, and here you are, the commissioner
There
of
is an idea here, you know, making your correction officer fed up of you, and then you can be released. So it's a new treatment to reduce number of inmates all around the world. Guys, think about it. It might be a solution. I've been hearing what you have said, and I've been thinking about women and men and differences, but I have two basic assumptions to share with you before I'll get into the point. First of all, as you can see, we are sitting, all of us, with our tradition dressing, but I am wearing my traditional retirement general suit. The second assumption that I would like to share with you is, because we don't have enough time, so what I'm going to speak about, the differences between women and men, it's a kind of generalization of the issue. You cannot get into details, you cannot base now on researches, so take it in a proportion. And I would say that there are differences. From my personal experience, I've been the commissioner of the Israeli prison service by the year 2000 up to the end of 2003, which, if you know, it was the time of the second Intifada. And all of a sudden, within less than 3 years, the number of what we call security inmates has been risen from less than 700 to almost 4,000. So there was a need to find some human resources and to deal with such a huge number of new inmates within a very short while. I leave it here as is, and I'll get back to that point by the end of what I have to tell you, or I want to tell you. So, speaking about abilities and qualifications and skills, there are some differences, and I can share with you the knowledge and the experience that women brings to the table some kind of different skills, mostly what we call soft skills. This comes from ancient days because, you know, the first point that I want to share with you is the ability to see the whole picture, but at the same time to identify and give your attention to the details of that wide picture. It came from the very beginning because women gave birth, raised the children, has to plant, has to harvest or to pick up the, has to cook, has to do their laundry, bring water from the river and whatever, everything simultaneously. So there is a need, an essential need to be able to do it. It gives you an ability to see the whole picture and identify what's going on at the same time. A second, what I would call soft skill, is the ability to contain. First of all, we contain our children before we give them some birth. And then, because of the fact that you were the person at home, at the cave, at the tent, it doesn't matter where, you had to deal with the children. Usually, we had more than one child. So there are disputes, there are diversities, there are differences. You have to deal with it. So that's a second, let's say, soft skill that women bring to the table. The third one is the ability to balance between. Aren't we all day and all the day balancing between career, family? I have to be here, no, I have to be there. I have to deal with that situation while someone is demanding my attention on the other side. That's the way we are living. So balancing. And I've shared with my colleagues here that sometimes it's like the person who is going on the rope,
The high wire.
the high wire, or in the circus. But there is one difference. He has a kind of a security network. We don't have it. I would say that the fourth point is being able to share your leadership with others, to work in a teamwork. It doesn't mean that you are not a leader. It doesn't mean that when you have to be the only one who takes the decision, you do it. But usually, we share the information, we give the people the opportunity to feel that they are part of the decision-making. They are not only those that has to implement it. Well, I want to get back to the point. I said it at the beginning. It is not a I'm not judging anything. It doesn't mean that it is better than or less than. It just brings to the table diversity. It just brings a wide range of abilities. So what I'm thinking about is when you bring men and women together, so the abilities comes from this side and the other side, and they bring up together in a synergy better, much better outcomes. And I can share with you from my experience 2 last points, with your permission.
Sure.
One is that I've told you that there was a need to put some new wardens in these new facilities. So when I came into position, there were 2 female wardens out of, I think, 20 facilities. One for the female, of course, and one for the juveniles. After 3 years, there were 8 wardens and few others in a core function that after 7 years since I retired, now we have in the Israeli prison service 5 brigadier generals female and 1 major general female. That was when I was there was only colonel. There was no high-ranking officer above colonel. So when you are there, you have to do it, because these women were talented, not just because they are women. They have been there all the time. You just need to identify, to define, and to put them, to give them the chance when they are acting at the best way. The last point is, from my experience again, I have met not very few men that have developed these soft skills. And unfortunately, I have met not so very few women that forgotten it. So we need to do it all together.
So let me ask you a question first. So when you then increase the number of women wardens, did you see any difference in how they, I mean, you've made these statements about women in general, but did you actually see it in the prison system?
Yes, of course. It's not only the wardens, it's wing commanders, it's security officers,
Right.
it's guards. It calms the environment, first of all. And I think that is an achievement for itself, because it brings you the opportunity to deal in a way with the inmates in a different way. Less tension, it's much better for both sides.
And so probably one of the reasons it calms, or the reasons that it calms the environment is the various attributes that you were saying, the characteristics that you were describing.
Yes,
about being
and
able
the
to
respect
listen.
that inmates are paying for women in such positions.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, yeah. So to stay with this issue of security that you've both talked about, doesn't the danger of these situations stop you from being able to do your work?
Well, let me pick up from here, Swani, because this is so important. I come from Afghanistan, and I'm an Afghan woman. This is so much related to the work that we do in Afghanistan. I just want to share a very special experience or a story that we all women faced It was June 2nd, 2010, the first day of National Consultative Peace Jirga in Kabul. Kabul was quiet because the Jirga in Jirga tent, Afghan government were hosting 1,600 Afghans from all Afghanistan, out of which 347 were women. A group of us got together in one car because only that car had access to the Jirga tent due to so much security. We had to be very careful to look as traditional as possible because we were really going to meet some of the men who were coming from provinces where they don't actually sit with women at the same platform. So finally we reached the place and we had to go through different checkpoints of the president's security because president was coming, President Karzai was coming. Finally, at 10 a.m., officially the Jirga started, and after the official inauguration and opening, it was in the middle of President Karzai's speech that 3 rockets hit.
Wow.
And these rockets, two hit a little bit far behind the tent, but 1 rocket was just behind the tent.
And were these like all at once, like, or
one after the other?
how long was in between?
A second.
Oh, okay.
A second.
All right.
And I just got an SMS from my colleague who was outside saying that suicide attackers are fighting outside the gate because they are trying to get inside. It was, imagine, it was such a tense situation for all of us. Our life was at risk. But what women did, we decided that we are going to continue our stay in the Jirga. Because the Jirga was for 3 days. We took the risk. And we didn't know what's going to happen next, the 2nd day, the 3rd day. And we had to actually face the challenge of actually fighting with our family.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah.
Because my mother was telling me, don't go. You're going to kill yourself.
Sure.
Don't go. But I think peace is so important for all of us. But we are contributing in Afghanistan. We are really working very hard, and yes, we are risking our lives. And we are proud of what we are doing. Thank you very much.
And you've also been able to get women into these major conferences, too.
Right.
Is it hard for them when they go back home, like from these conferences? Or are families proud, or is there some retribution? Do they get criticized when they go back?
It differs from family to family in Afghanistan because culturally we are, I always use this word diverse. We are so much diverse.
Yeah.
The way I live in Kabul, a woman do not live in Parwan province, which is an hour drive from Kabul to Parwan. So it differs from family to family.
Right. And so have any of you, Rebecca?
I'm just also imagining her age and the environment she works in. And being so confident and ready to face the danger, I'm just looking at that, and it comes from her first, so forceful and very strong.
Yeah, but you...
Believe me, they get used to it. Like, for example, when we were arrested, I told my mother in the morning that we are going to do this, we are going to the court. And she saw it in Al Jazeera, 42 ladies were arrested. She said, I knew you would be one of them.
Right. Well, and Rebecca, you were a freedom fighter,
So,
right?
Yeah, yes, I was. It was not easy.
So, I mean, tell us about that.
I don't know if the audience think I look like a freedom fighter. Do
I look like a general?
You do.
Yeah, that's right. You look like a general, right?
Yes, I think it's good to flash back, but I would love to make it a comparison. Let it be the wall of comparison, just moving from war to peace and looking at dangers and security and protection. You are aware, of course, from your reading that the war broke out in South Sudan, the civil war in 1983. And I got married in 1986. And I'm sure if I ask a married couple here, you will talk about your honeymoon in Paris and in, any of these parts of the world. But Rebecca's story is to have her honeymoon in the bush.
And you don't have to pay a mortgage.
I don't have to. So it was not easy. It was not easy, you know. The life of bush is not an easy one. It's not the nearby bush that you will talk about. It's real forest, you know, when there are animals, and you have to look for a place where you can be secure also to be able to carry on with your work. So here it is in the bush, you know. It's real bush, it's real forest, it's difficult. You know, you have nowhere to sleep, but to find yourself a place to sleep.
Oh, wait, where did you sleep then?
You know, you have to use your mind. And it's good when you're out of a town or a city, you can even use your brain better. You can use twigs of trees. You know, sometimes we cut these trees and then you can make what you would imagine to be a bed. And if you really yearn for a mattress, you can get some grass around and stuff it and make a very good bed. It's your choice. What do you like? What makes you comfortable, providing that it will be pinching you throughout the night if you have to sleep. Also, you know, there was a time that there were airdrops, you know, for food to reach some of the people who are displaced, and then that's where we get promoted, and you'll be able to use the boxes that are used for airdropping food. You take these boxes and you make a makeshift of a bed. You would imagine it, of course, psychologically, and then you sleep on it and it will make a bed. It was not easy, it was rough. There was a lot of danger, it was war situation. Also, I wouldn't forget how we were relying on the communities, you know, because you don't have any supply of food. You will have to look for food to eat. Apart from picking what is there, what type of animals you could get to eat, and we have tried, you know, how it's good to try any type of animal, any type of a tree, any type of leaves. You know, if it doesn't kill you, then it is food. Also, you know, but we also relied on the communities, you know, the communities around, people who are in villages, real villages deep there, and then, you know, they have their eggs, they have their chicken before they got depleted. These are the things we were relying on. Moving from the situation of war, danger, fear, and, you know, even if you are a freedom fighter, you can also get killed. That has not been easy. But I think the most important thing is how you transit from a war situation, from difficulties into moving towards peace. And that's why I'm talking about comparison. It was time for us, the women, to work for peace and to advocate for peace and to create awareness with the women, with the communities, for them to gear towards peace. I think the beautiful part that I wanted really to compare to the war background is how we created awareness with the women, with the communities, for them to vote, to go into a referendum and vote for peace, for a peaceful South Sudan. That is, again, it's giving back. It's giving hope. It's moving from fear into opportunity of stability and of peace. And it's these same women that we managed to create awareness with, to move into the process of referendum so that they vote for their destiny. And we worked on slogans and messages that were very, very effective. You know, some of them, like, you know, your destiny is in your hand, your vote counts. You know, I had a T-shirt. I wish I can bring it to show you, you know, this kind of slogans we have used. And it was very, very effective, encouraging women to vote for their destiny. The most important bit, again, of it, which is my last point, is to give back. The same women, the same communities that were helping and feeding us during the war are the same communities we went back to in their villages. And these villages are what? These are huts, which are mud-made, plastered with mud, grass thatch, and, you know, a difficult situation. But the most important bit in the advent of peace and security. So, you know, what we say is that the same eggs we were eating from them those days, it's time now for us to give them peace. The chicken we were eating from them, it was time to give them stability. The same goats we were eating from them, it was time to give them independence, give them recognition, and give them that hope that they wanted to see.
Wow.
I'm happy to share this with you.
Wow. Wow, that's fabulous. That's fabulous.
So I'm a peacemaker, not a freedom fighter now. A hope giver.
Well, talking about the villages reminds me of some of the scenes that I saw pictures of, Muzarat. As you know, we've worked together for a couple of years, and you've shown me at times pictures of you in the villages as well. And I think about you as the professor and the researcher, and then in the village. Do you have a scene from that?
Yeah, of course. We work in the areas which are hard hit by extremism, and they are, of course, conflict prone and conflict affected. We work at the community level to address the extremism amongst the, at that level. And while working with the communities, we came across some mothers who just thought that they should join us. Those were the mothers of extremists. And while talking to these mothers, we just told them that you have to, are you happy with the way your child is in the hideout or your child is with the extremist? And they, first of all, they did not trust us. That are we talking to them can they trust us or not? And I think over a period of time, we built that trust with those mothers, and they started coming to us and they said, yes, we definitely would like our boy to survive. We want them alive. And in this process, one of the mothers, who I think was courageous enough to take the initiative of calling me and saying that my son has come back from the hideouts, but I don't know when he will leave the house. Can you make it now? It was 9 o'clock at night. I live in Islamabad, and the mother was calling me from Swat, which is 4 hours drive from Islamabad. And I said, it's very dangerous right now, because at that time the military operation was it just was over. And I said, definitely, I'll be there with you and will be having my breakfast with you around 8:30 in the morning. And she had to keep her son till 8:30. This is very difficult. So when I reached there, I entered her house. I sat with the 4 sisters, the boy and the mother, on the floor of the kitchen. It was like a muddy house, and I sat with them on the floor. A cup of tea along with the bread was in front of us, and I was just talking to this boy. The boy was shocked because the mother did not tell her that there will be this modern lady coming from Islamabad. But whenever we go to the villages, and especially when I am facing I'm meeting these boys for the first time, we hide our face like this. And this is actually, we feel that we are secure. So I was in this situation, I just sat with him on the floor and started talking to him. He was very shy. But one thing that I could notice in his eyes was very strange. There was so much sadness. And the eyes was very blank, but you could just see through them that there was something in him that was very disturbing. And then I started discussing with him, why did you join these people? Are you happy? And he was just looking at me like this, initially very blank. And then he said, why are you asking me this question? Where were you when we were going through hell? And where were you when we had no food to eat? And you know, the food that I can offer you now, I could not even provide this to my family. So I said, oh, you got the money for this? And he said, of course, we get the money for it. But that's not the only reasons that these boys joined these forces. The story is very long, but definitely I convinced the boy, and I just discussed it with the mother. And I feel unless and until the mothers are not supportive, the boys, and of course the boys, especially those who are with the extremists, would dare not come to a woman like me. So the mother had a trust in me. She transmitted that trust, of course. We tried to transmit that trust through the mother to the boy, and the boy, he said that he agreed that he definitely want to go back to the normal life. This was the beginning of the de-radicalization process that we wanted to initiate in those areas. That was the first boy. We tried to help him. We tried to bring him out from that situation, try to transform his attitude towards life, as well as the way they were being convinced and the way Quranic verses and Islamic teaching have been misinterpreted to transform them into jihadis, into suicidal attackers, because nowhere in the Quran it says that suicide is, you can go for suicidal attack. It's forbidden in Islam. Similarly, jihad can actually take place in certain situations. But when you ask these boys, what is meant by jihad? And they said, killing of the infidel. And who is the infidel? Pakistan security forces are the infidels. But why? Because they are siding with those who want to harm us. So, like, it takes time to convince these people that this is not the real Islam. Islam means peace. And it takes months and sometimes, sometimes weeks and sometimes months to convince and to transform the mindset, and particularly those who have gone through a lot. So we were able to transform not only this boy, but this was just the beginning. And of course we are now have placed them very well in the society. The most difficult and challenging part for us even today is the acceptance of the community, the reintegration of these boys back in their own communities. And we had to build a better, I would say, trust with the community so that they accept them. But thanks God, so far we have been able to take back 79 boys back to their communities, have placed them well, and they are working in different, I would say, places, earning a decent livelihood for themselves, and are very productive citizens, have become very productive citizens.
It's a powerful, yes, please.
It's amazing because it gives hope that there is a possibility to make that process reversible.
Yeah.
It is inspiring because, from the other side you always deal with the radicalization and extremism and how to cope. Maybe part of coping is preventing and doing things like you have done and others. This is really acting like an angel, because it gives us hope that there is ways to change things not only by force, which is very important for me.
Thank you.
You have to persuade, and I think prevention is better than cure. So I think before everything, I think we need to prevent it from happening again.
Well, I know that there are huge efforts among the women that are here, because you represent only half the women who are here for this week-long meeting that we have, and several are working on the schools and peace education, etc. So there are so many ways that women are working on this. I want to open this up to questions, but first I want to introduce to us all John Yema out of the Christian Science Monitor. The Monitor is so well known, I don't have to tell you much about it in terms of the stand not just for international news, but for human rights and conflict resolution. And I appreciate particularly, John, after the Nobel Prize, the fact that you were willing to give that coverage that was so explicit and so powerful to that. And I think through the years, you may have been the first person, the first reporter who interviewed us when we started, or maybe when I came here, to create the Women in Public Policy program. Would you like to go to the mic and do the first question, and others who would like to join, but please, I'd love to actually hear. I mean, you've been sitting there like a reporter with your pad and your pen. I mean, do you have any reflections on what you've just heard?
I can't think without a pen or a
yeah,
notebook, but
yeah.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Hunt. And also, I just wanted to recognize Gina Moore, who won the UN Correspondence Association's Elizabeth Newfer Award, the gold medal, for a wonderful article she did for the Monitor, an in-depth article on peace building. And so I know you knew Elizabeth.
Yes.
And Gina is very much in Elizabeth's shoes, that kind of a reporter.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Gina. Welcome, welcome. And John, will you turn the mic toward your, toward you a little bit. There we go.
I just wanted to pick up on Monserrat's point about this idea of, there's so much effort goes into peace making. And as Rebecca said, you've got to make peace, and then you've got to keep peace, and then you've got to build peace. But it doesn't take much to have that cycle of violence return, right? I mean, something can break it very quickly. And you've identified radicalization and the attempt to de-radicalize young people. But I wonder if maybe the General could tell us about this too. Is there anything that you've ever hit upon that helps to de-glamorize war in the minds of especially young men? Because we know that that's something that they're attracted to. And have you had any thoughts about that?
Let's just open that up to anybody, anyone who would like to address that. Right.
No, I need some clarification for what you have been asking.
Well, it just seems to me that, the whole idea of peace building is a rather, it's complex, it's slow. You've described a kind of a knitting together of societies. But there is an attraction, it does seem, especially among young men, to violence and war. And so it doesn't take much attraction to simply ruin all of the work that is being done very slowly to build peace. And I just wonder if perhaps the General could address this, because in watching people come through a penal system, for instance, is there anything that happens in which you can see their thought changing so that they actually begin to support the idea of building society rather than taking up a gun and doing the glamorous or the romantic thing in their minds?
Well, I think it begins and ends in education. That's the point. And if we have failed to that point and brought them to that situation, when they are in facilities or in community treatment, there is a need to try and find alternatives. Even, in prison, in the juvenile prisons, prison, only one in Israel, you give them alternatives like even playing soccer or doing a lot of activities that will enable them first to be able to take all their aggression and frustration, and then to give them some new skills and abilities. How to deal with tension, how to work to channelize your anger to different way of like art, like reading, like theater, everything that will be a replacement for that need to come. Sometimes they just want to be shown, to be influential. You can try to channelize it to a positive way. Sometimes it goes, it wins, it succeeds, sometimes not, but never give up.
I think in addition to that, I'd like to refer to the situation of South Sudan, for example. I think violence is culture, and as well as peace is also culture. So, for example, South Sudan, you are very much concerned about the peace culture in terms of including it in the curriculum. for students.
Education again.
Yes,
Education.
exactly.
Maybe
yeah.
I continue from there. It depends on the objective environment in every country. There are countries where people suffer from injustices, and therefore they will tell you, have been asking, like in South Sudan. We wanted our independence, and it was not there, and we were subjected to oppressive regimes and Sharia, Islamic laws, and all this. There was no way for people to pick up arms and to say, okay, if it doesn't work with the dialogue, we are going to tell you we are also strong. And that's why I'm saying it was with a cause, but again, violence usually is not good. That's why we hurry to say, tell them you have oppressed me too much, but I'm not for war. I want to move into peacetime. But again, when it comes to the youngsters, I think that's where your question is. You mean people need democracies, if I could use that word in the general term. You need to be given your space. You need your rights. If you are robbed of them, then you open a space for people to say, okay, I have an opportunity now to go and fight. She mentioned the issue of peace education. If I go back a little bit, if you allow me, Swani, on the culture in South Sudan, for example, I mean, we have our cultural way of peacemaking and peacekeeping. But because we were subjected to defending ourselves, then you find the youngsters going into the culture of violence or being angry, of reacting. Now, what we are doing with the peace building is to ensure that they are educated more. The peace culture is there, and it is consolidated in such a way that their mind think of peace, of stability, of development, more than resorting to war. And it works for me a lot now in the Ministry of General Education, that we want to include that in the curriculum, so that peace education is part of the curriculum, so that we move out of this thinking about joining those who want to rebel, but those who are working for peace. So it takes a lot. I agree with my colleagues. Peace education, keep on working on it, consolidating, building it, making it strong. Let them sing it. Let them think about it, and let them follow the nonviolent approach. We need that for the generation to come.
Well, I'm just struck as you all pass this conversation down the road, and here we have a spectacular woman leader from Sudan and then from South Sudan, and you all were at war. I mean, your countries were at war for so many decades, so many deaths, and then came back to this peace agreement with the referendum 6 years later, and then a secession. I mean, the struggle between these two peoples, and here you are, I mean, you're like sisters, and I want to personally applaud you and say that the strength of your coalition is an example for the whole world. Yes, we have a question here and a question there. Yes. And please identify yourself.
Sure. My name is Arya. I'm a student at the MPA second two-year program here at Harvard Kennedy School. I just wanted to thank everybody for sharing a glimpse of your amazing experiences. It's inspirational. My question is for Ms. Samira Hamidi from Afghanistan. You told us about the experience of being at the Loya Jirga and the rockets hitting. And I was wondering how, as an Afghan woman, I'm concerned about how the peace process is going to affect my fate and the fate of my daughter, if I'd have any in future. Because something that I'm seeing is that the peace process may involve a couple of compromises, one of which might be with regards to women's issues and women's rights in Afghanistan. And we hear again and again that, yes, the constitution would be followed, but with so much uncertainty with regards to the peace deal and how it's being taken care of, and the Afghan government is not even in the picture, and how you, as a woman who has been in the middle of all of this, with leading a network of women with 80 women organizations and 5,000 personnel, which I assume is across the country, what is your understanding and analysis of this peace deal, and how hopeful I should be as a woman?
Thank you very much. Very interesting question. At the same time, very difficult, very technical, very challenging. Yes, thank you, Orit. I was looking for the word. Well, the peace process, yes, has started. And the peace process is something that has come based on the recommendation of we Afghans. We got together in the Jirga and we recommended that we want to go for a peace process. And then we sat on a lawyer Jirga, November 2011. Again, we said how the peace process should go. Yes, there is a change in the policy of our government. Every day something is happening. But I don't think Afghan women rights will be sacrificed. Our achievements will be sacrificed because we are not the women of 2001. This is what I have been saying in the Bonn conference, which just took place on 5th December 2011.
And you all wore green scarves?
And we, absolutely. We had our green scarves and we were actually meeting number of policymakers, foreign ministers, delegations, telling them that we want to be part of the development of our country. We want to see a real transition in Afghanistan where we Afghans take the lead. We will be making mistakes, for sure, but we will learn from our mistakes. So where I see the Afghan women now and where I have been seeing them in 2001, I'm just telling you, don't worry about your right. That will be negotiation, because we will not let it happen.
I have to add, we had 11 women leaders from Afghanistan who were brought here. Mikyajevic was very involved with pulling this all together, and Michelle Barsa, who is a Kennedy School grad. And we put together 20 meetings in Washington, and they were featured on the NewsHour, et cetera, at the Pentagon, White House, et cetera. It was striking to me when one of the women said, look, she was being asked, I think it was on Congress by a senator, asked, you know, well, what are you going to do? You can't have the Taliban at these talks. And she said, look, the Taliban, these are our family. And if my arm is hurting me, if my arm is wounded, if my arm is diseased, I don't cut off my arm. She said, put them at the table, put us at the table, and in 3 days, there will be a difference.
That is always
and you know, that's something that we have a very hard time understanding and imagining. Please, sir.
Thank you. My name is Sheikh Mohammed Dalal. I am from Bangladesh, attending this mid-career program. As you said, that many things changed. One of the changes that happened to me after coming to this school, I started asking all kind of difficult questions. So I think I seek your advance indulgence if my question, if you find it a little bit awkward. The term, I think, the freedom fighter, I don't know last time when I heard it. The first time I think I heard it, when you use this term for the first time today, after a long many years. When we were growing in the 70s and our school time, this is the term all around. So all on a sudden we came to see that term hardly around us. So I would like to see from Ambassador Hunt why the evolution of this term freedom fighter, how it's transformed and what made it that made some freedom fighter that I used to know converted into revolutionary or mercenaries, and why is Madam Minister is a freedom fighter, why your colleague Taliban or Hamas in Palestine are not?
Let me make sure I understand your question. I'll restate it very differently. How do you use a term like freedom fighter, which is so positive, in one situation, and then you talk about other groups as terrorists.
Yes.
Is that in short?
Well, my understanding is I call someone freedom fighter who is fighting for something which is taken away, or which he or she thinks that wrongly she is not allowed to enjoy. And by that definition, I tend to believe that most of the terrorists who are now being branded as, that they also have a cause that they are fighting for.
Yes.
But we don't call them freedom fighters.
Yes.
So I would like to see what is the difference between these freedom fighters. What is the bottom line that we will call them freedom fighters and will not call them freedom fighters?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that. I am going to see what comments you all have because you're living in the situation. I mean, I can answer in terms of in my own mind, but please. Yes, please.
Okay. You are rightly saying when you say freedom fighter, it's positive. It means somebody is fighting, is expressing, is demanding their rights because they have been robbed of their rights. That's also how I understand it, and that's why I use it very proudly, because I don't want to go into details, but with the situation of South Sudan, as I said earlier, it was clear. The injustices were very clear for South Sudanese. The laws were imposed on us. We were never given time to develop ourselves, and we are starting it now. That's why today when we talk about reconstruction and rebuilding, we say there is nothing to reconstruct. There is nothing to rebuild. We are starting fresh. All that was happening was our resources were being robbed, were being siphoned. Even our oil, which was discovered in South Sudan, was being taken through a pipe to be taken to a refinery outside there. So we're not given an opportunity to exercise even our political rights. So that's why we called ourselves freedom fighters. That was what I would say, fighting for a cause, but you are not fighting for the sake of fighting and killing somebody else. You are defending yourself, somebody who has come to rob you of your right, and you are saying, no, I will not allow you. And it is a human right. So these are the freedom fighters. And maybe just again to confirm is that if I were talking like 10 years ago, you would have said, you are just like any other terrorist. You are just trying to kill others. You have no cause. But today that we have accepted to sit at the negotiating table, discuss the issues, and we sat and sat and sat for years until we managed to reach the process of elections and referendum and independence, and the new country has been declared, we said, fine, we don't want to fight anybody else. So that's what it means to be a freedom fighter. There are other groups that would want to fight for the sake of imposing. It's just the other side of the coin. If somebody, it's the other side of the coin. For me, it was fighting for my rights. On the other side, somebody was bombarding our villages. They were coming to take our rights. And these are the people who want to encroach on your rights. So they are the ones who want to fight. So I think the difference then is that someone wants to terrorize, someone wants to impose their own opinion, someone wants to rob others. These are the ones who are not freedom fighters, because if you ask them, what is it? Why do you want to abduct children? If I go back to what she was saying, these young people who are supposed to go to school, they're supposed to grow, it is their right. They go and they are inducted or conscripted into a movement or an activity which at the end of the day, the children or the young people are asked to go and commit suicide, throw bombs, suicidal attacks. This to me is negative. So it has to be very clear, even for us as freedom fighters, we wouldn't want to be mixed with the terrorists and people who just want to fight. So there is a positive aspect of it, but it must be short-term, and then you must be thinking towards a solution. And I think we tried our very best to work. Today there is a political will, and that's why I think having it positive is very, very important. And it must end with education, with transformation, with peace building, with development.
And I agree with everything you said, and I can also very much, I think, sympathize with your point of view in that question, because clearly there are very few people who say, and I'm a terrorist, you know, right? That they feel like that they are also fighting for a just cause, and others are calling them terrorists. And like you said, Rebecca, people would have been calling you a terrorist, and then after the fact, those terrorists become freedom fighters, or the freedom fighters become terrorists, you know, in the eyes of other people. I will tell you that it is striking to me that the name of Elizabeth Newfer was called this evening, because Elizabeth worked in Rwanda, and she worked in Bosnia. She died in Iraq. And I think she would be right with me saying that intervention should have happened much, much sooner. And what do we mean by intervention? We mean bombs and we mean bullets. And if you stand back, and I was advocating for that as ambassador. I was there 93 to 97, Indiana, advocating hard as I could inside the White House for military intervention. So what does that make me, you know? But when you get to a point where the least violent option is military intervention, what a failure. What a failure. And we should never be proud of that moment when that is the only option, because we could have somehow done something, even putting our lives on the line in the hundreds of thousands, if that's what it took, if that's what it would have taken to earlier on have, you know, stop the political figures with their power grabs. So my sympathies are with you as you ask that question, and I'm very, very glad that you asked it. Thank you. We can do one more. I'm getting a sign from the back, and you were first, I believe. Was she first, or were you first, Jeannie? I was. Tell, who was first? You were first. Okay. Okay, sorry. Snooze, you lose, you know. Okay.
I want to thank you all so much for sharing with us. As a journalist, I've been a guest in many communities and many countries that contend with conflict, and over time you flirt a lot with cynicism, and I didn't hear a note of that tonight, which reminds me that cynicism is a luxury for people who think about conflict and not people who are forced into living with it, and that for me was very powerful, so thank you. I was also really struck by what you said, Rebecca, that after the war you need to give the eggs back to the villages, to sort of paraphrase this thing that you said much more lovely than I did. And I was struck because I've interviewed so many freedom fighters, whatever we call them now, once they've ascended to power, or ascended to power and then lost power, and they talk about the right to power that they earned through fighting, and you talk about the responsibility that fighting gives you to the people who helped you get there. And I wonder if your male freedom fighting colleagues share this perspective and what it looks like in that way from other countries, and how we can get more people thinking like you after the fact.
What'd you say? Yes, it's your question. Do you, because you said something really extraordinary. They gave us the eggs, they gave us the chickens, we're going to give them back peace and stability. And you know, is that the general feeling shared, do you think? Let me put it this way. Is it as easy for men to get to that point as you described, as you think it is for women?
I'm sure it's not easy. But again, with respect to South Sudan, again, just going back to say that I wish we were not pushed into war and into fighting. And then again, I don't want to paint that women are the angels and men are the devils. No. if you fight for something, then you must carry it forward, as you agree with me. You know, we go back and take responsibility. Today there is a government in South Sudan, and one of the things, examples I would give as how I think our government is considerate, even if they are males, is that, for instance, women, we advocated for the affirmative action, 25% affirmative action for women. If our men were really completely thinking otherwise, they wouldn't have allowed that space for us today, that we managed to enshrine the 25% affirmative action in the Constitution. And when it comes to filling the seats, there was a time we unseated men who took our seats. And our government never said, no, you can't do that. It was our right to do that. So I believe they share with us the feelings that it is our right and we have to take our right. It's the same thing when we talk about having women in the cabinet, for instance, or in the legislature. I remember when we were appointed by decree in August, when we were swearing in, the president said, I know you women are looking at me, during the swearing in ceremony. I'm just talking about the political will, so that we don't also think all men don't think, you know, don't have the heart. And he said, for you deputy ministers, there are 10 of you deputy ministers out of 29, which is more than 25%. I think that was very considerate. And he said it during the swearing in ceremony and said, I'm happy that I managed to give you your right. You fought for it and it is your right. For the full ministers, not the deputy but full ministers, there are 5 of them. I know you have a bone to pick with me. I think that was very considerate of him thinking of that. Also the area of development in general, I think with our government now, development is key, education is key, agriculture is key. But I think the most important bit I want to bring in, so that again I come back to the perspective of women and what General said earlier for it, is that we have that soft, you call it soft what? Soft skills. You know, our antennas are always, you know, picking areas that are not seen by men sometimes. So we keep vigilant. We track. When things are not happening, we talk about them openly. So we continue to sensitize. And that's why in our movement and our coalitions as women, we don't leave men out. If they don't have that soft what? Soft skills, soft skills, we make sure that they are there, that we are reminding them that we need to give the chicken and the egg back to the community. They know that. It's part of the policies in the government. I'm in it and I know it's happening. But again, that reminder, we have to keep it on. We have to make sure that the reconstruction, the building, the sensitization is going on, because it's for the good. You cannot rule or govern people without giving them their right, without giving them the stability they need. And it's happening with our government. I'm happy with it, but again, we have to keep vigilant, we have to keep reminders, and we have to be persistent, and we have to keep on giving people back their right. That's what they fought for.
And the general wants to.
A short comment to that, maybe from a social point of view. The first population to be vulnerable under attacks, under violence, are children, women, and elders. So women had that awareness in a natural way, because they can play both roles. And our role as women, as strong women, as women who have made it, is to increase awareness among our male colleagues. Because then, at the next time, they will be able to see it as faster as we might do it.
So this has been fabulous, as always. And Rebecca, you ended your time in our class, because I am teaching inclusive security here at the school. You ended your time in our class in an extraordinary way. Would you end this forum? Yeah, I want you to do what you did.
Is everybody ready to check their bodies?
Everybody's ready to
like
check.
that?
Okay. Right, yeah. Okay, do it. Okay.
Okay. I think we need to celebrate the women who won the Nobel Prize, isn't it?
Sure.
And the problem with me is that I don't celebrate when I'm sitting. I like to stand, I like to move. It's the same way I celebrated everything, and I celebrate the women. And for you in the balcony up there, are we together? Yeah. Do you have the energy? Yeah. Remember, you are dealing with a freedom fighter. So you have to have the energy. Okay, we are going to sing a song.
Okay.
But we really have to participate, all of us. I think we had done a lot of talking. It's time now for you also to share with us.
Okay.
We are going to sing, I'm going to sing in simple Arabic. And it's about women shining. All the women are shining. But remember, men, you are also shining with us. So it goes this way. Nuswan kullu giwala. I will say that, don't worry. All I want you to say is giwala, giwala. Are shining, are shining. Giwala, giwala. The other thing you'll have to do, when I mention your name, I may not remember all the names, I don't know all the names, but if you may feel excited if I don't know your name, and then you just have to show us how you are really giwala, how you are really shining. You can't be shining like this, isn't it? So you really have to shine. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. And the clapping. And I will ask you at some point to stand up. Nuswan kullu giwala. Nuswan kullu giwala. Giwala, giwala. Nuswan kullu giwala. Giwala, giwala. Usufu swani giwala. Giwala, giwala. Usufu swani giwala. Giwala, giwala. Usufu meki giwala. Giwala, giwala. Usufu meki giwala.
You have to stay up.
Giwala, giwala. Here, Jonathan giwala. Ooh. Hey, Jonathan giwala. Hey, giwala, giwala. Shufu Jonathan giwala, giwala, giwala. Hey, Samia giwala. Oh, giwala, giwala, giwala. Shufu Samia giwala. You, there you giwala. Hey, giwala, giwala. Shufu Umma giwala, giwala, giwala. I see you giwala. Oh, giwala, giwala. I'm not seeing the action. Giwala, giwala, giwala. The cameraman giwala. Oh. Giwala, giwala, giwala. Kennedy School giwala. Giwala, giwala. Kennedy School giwala, giwala, giwala. Women peacemakers giwala. Shufu General giwala. Giwala, giwala. Shufu General giwala, giwala, giwala. Kim, you are giwala. Giwala, giwala. Shufu Swani giwala, giwala, giwala. Kullu giwala. Giwala, giwala. This one kullu giwala, giwala, giwala.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Aren't they magnificent? Woo! Woo! Okay, everyone, thank you so much for being here.
No, I just got in on the.
How's it going with you?
Good. You know, I finished sort of finishing up that document that I've got some good feedback.